Hey guys, Alex Newman here. We're at the COP30 in Belém, Brazil, and we're with Orion Camero. He is an activist. He's here with some posters and doing a lot of work. Orion, thanks for being with us. Talk to us about your posters and what you're doing here in Belém.
Yeah, so thank you so much for being here. I am an arts activist and illustrator, and narrative strategist, and this is a graphic called The Exposition. It's one of 3 illustrations in a trilogy portraying different social and environmental issues that happen across the state.
State of California.
State of California, that's right. And a lot of what we try to do is do participatory action research where we talk to directly affected communities about stories of oppression and liberation that they experience, and then we try to pay tribute to those in these graphics that we then use as centerpieces for educational and organizing campaigns.
Cool. And so I see you got some of the big tech companies here. You got Amazon, Apple, Google, there's Meta, Facebook, here's some oil companies. So what are the companies doing? Why are they in here?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of this is like trying to just navigate and name dynamics while not necessarily positioning a hero-villain archetype narrative, but more just to like lay out what's happening, right? So for example, when you're talking about the tech companies, this is actually drawing parallels between the tech boom and the gold rush, which is down here.
Oh, okay.
You see an ancestral miner figure panning for gold in a landfill to try to talk and comment on this idea of hollow wealth versus real wealth. So there's also a scale that compares a piece of gold to an Instagram like as a metaphor for, hey, let's think about sort of the social and material repercussions of some of the decisions we're making.
Huh. And so why did you decide to come here? Like, what's your mission? You're concerned about climate change, I guess?
Yeah, so this is my 6th COP. I am a rapid response arts activist, so I do a lot of banner making for frontline communities, as well as song and chant generation for frontline demands so that our voices can be heard. I haven't been to a COP since Scotland, COP 26, mainly because it was a very traumatic one. It happened right after the pandemic. But I'm really here because I stand in solidarity with the Amazon. I have a lot of dear Brazilian comrades that I've shown up for over the years, and there's a lot of kinship between the Brazil and the Philippines. So I'm here to really be extra capacity, in creative ways, and also to show up and try to draw connections between local and global struggles, because ultimately it's all at the root cause that we need to solve these issues, and it shows up locally and it shows up globally.
So what is the root cause of the problems and how do they get fixed?
You know, for me, what I really feel are the root causes is colonialism and capitalism. We know that these legacies have destroyed entire communities, entire ecologies, entire lifeways and languages. And one of the things that's felt really important at this COP is the reality that indigenous wisdom is very saturated in the Amazon. And yet those communities are not heard and are often left out of negotiating spaces. There was a larger amount of indigenous representation here, and a lot of the efforts to make this COP the People's COP and the Indigenous COP had happened in a lot of different ways, but some of the material actions that need to happen, such as demarcation of territories, such as ensuring that oil companies are not harming indigenous communities, that infrastructure projects aren't built to affect communities. These are all really key things that have been big pieces here, as well as the fact that militarism was such a strong presence here at the COP this year, and that was something that I think has been a dynamic that it mirrors a lot of environmental justice struggles across the world that we have to pay attention to as well.
Yeah. So you say capitalism and colonialism. What do we replace those with, I guess? It was socialism, communism, and how do we stop colonialism, or I guess what's left of it?
I mean, all these words, I know that colonialism and capitalism are kind of jargony, and I would even venture to say that some of the things you said feel a little jargony. I think for me, one of the things that feels really important is actually getting to the root cause. So when I think about alternatives to capitalism capitalism and colonialism, I'm actually thinking about regenerative economies, ways in which...
What's a regenerative economy?
You know, there's a lot of really good work happening out of the New Economy Coalition that models that. Worker-owned cooperatives, ways in which there isn't this endless extractive top-down structures of holding business that actually don't listen to directly experience your workers that might have, meaningful contributions to shaping the economy in better ways. Ways in which we don't continuously extract in finite ways and actually think about ways that we are able to use resources in wise patterns and in wise decisions. I think that there's many different angles to go about it when we think about regenerative economies. And then when I think about colonialism, I think oftentimes about just the imbalances of power, right? And thinking a lot about what does it look like to have cultures of care, respect, reciprocity embedded in all of our civic engagement, not just in politics, but in daily life, everyday life, right? And I think that that is a missing piece that I think is sorely needed across the world.
Yeah, and so I see on your shirt you've got Philippines solidarity, Palestine. How does that fit into the big picture here with the root cause problems that you're talking about?
I honestly feel like Palestine is a very specific place-based issue that is interconnected and draws so many connections between all sorts of social and environmental crises. For me, one of the things that feels really important is that any lineage that has been colonized and extracted from has an inherent solidarity with Palestine, because what we're seeing right now is real-time colonization of entire cultures, entire peoples being erased in order for larger agendas to be put forward, and I think enough is enough. I think that we have seen so much systemic violence visibly on our screens the last few years. I think civil society is ready to end this genocide, and also the genocides that are also happening in Sudan, in the Congo, all over the place. And so I just feel, I feel like all those issues are connected, and feel like Palestine was also such a big key part of this year's COP as well.
So what do you make of the Trump administration? Obviously, they didn't send any representation here. There's no U.S. representation here. Trump says climate change is the biggest con job in the history of humanity. What do you do with that?
One of the things that's really important is remembering that inside of a dictatorship, we have to actually decenter the individualist story and remember that we're actually inside of a society and we should act like that. And so when I think about this one person that may be trying to proliferate harmful culture, we have to remember how to expand capacity for helpful cultures and people that are ready to show up for climate and ready to show up for community across the world. And so we know, yes, that he's not here. The U.S., at least on a federal level, is not showing up. But we know also that there's a progressive culture and movement of people that are invested in climate solutions, that are making the next steps, that are doing these things. And we actually need to expand their capacity instead of always feeding into negative stories about fascism that is honestly more of a global symptom, and this is just our version of it, rather than thinking about how to center this one person, because a society needs to show up and take care of each other and itself, and I think that's the only way we have to move forward.
Yeah. And so if you could wave a magic wand and have these UN delegates here from all over the world do whatever you wanted them to do, what would be in this final agreement?
I think one of the things that feels... That's such a big question. It's kind of unfair, but I will run with it for you.
All right.
I would say for me, when I think about this, I would say that these negotiation spaces need to be more brazen about naming issues so that entire global communities can be inspired to take action, because nothing happens here that dictates movements that are broader and bigger than this place. So, for example, right, the conversations around militarism, the conversations around femicide, ecocide, genocide, weapons, militarism, these are things that I feel like are not being touched because there are industries trying to actively influence the negotiations, fossil fuel companies that want to maintain the status quo, when actually there's a brilliant vision that I think civil society is positioned to make possible if we're actually given the ability to do so. And so I want to say that for me, one of the things that feels important is actually how does the UN actually create brazen dialogue that's talking about these issues instead of moving across all this bureaucratic, confusing maze language, and then actually get into the heart of what we're trying to solve here. Because while they're making these sort of abstract abstract decisions and policy text about these that are actually not enforceable because UN has no legal grounding. There are communities dying every day. And so I feel like for me, one of the things I feel like is important is, for me, I used to be invested a lot in the policy here, engaged, because this is my sixth COP. I have learned to realize that for me, I personally think that COP and the UN, this space is a mic. And I think that people can see what's going on here. It's hyper visible, and it helps to shape future narratives and labor that needs to happen after this, because who cares what's happening here at COP if there isn't a movement and a narrative and a storyline that happens after.
Very good. And before we let you go, what's your message to Trump supporters in America? I mean, half the country, I guess, voted for him, or half the voters at least. What do you say to him?
I would say that, when I think about the disconnection across our society and across different people, I would say that, it's really important to remember to move with compassion rather than judgment. I think a lot of people that made the decision to vote for this person is coming from a place of real harm that's happening in their communities and see him as a solution. And I would venture to ask you to expand your empathy. Think about the communities around the world that also need to be thought about. Expand your empathy to think about the communities of color that are impacted by these things, these policies. And remember that, ultimately what we want is a society that can heal and can thrive and can take care of each other. We ultimately all want our families and our friends to live good lives. And the more that we can see that that is a shared vision is the more that we can work together. I think I would say that to anyone that is willing to talk about things instead of jumping to dehumanize me, and remember to not dehumanize people.
Yeah. Does it bother you that there's like none of those kinds of people here? Like not just official, representation of the U.S. government, but there's like zero conservatives here, basically zero people on the other side of the political spectrum, I guess, from what most of the folks here. Do you think that should change?
I can't force anybody to go anywhere. If they, I think that would be interesting. I think it would be important, right? Because I think an ecosystem thrives off many different perspectives. But yeah, I think that's up to people. And if people aren't coming, that's their choice.
Cool. Well, we appreciate it, Ryan. How can people learn more? You can follow you on social media. You got a website. What's the best way?
Yeah. So our project is called The Category. You can find us at The Category on Instagram. We also have a website called category.org. We've been doing some storytelling workshops across California, and we're gearing up to finish the rest of this trilogy of illustrations. So we're gonna stay doing that work, and we do storytelling presentations at schools, universities, do workshops anywhere that anyone will have us, and we do interactive workshops and get people engaged with this process. So
excellent. Well, hey, Orion, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Good to meet you.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Folks, we'll be back with more.